I am talking to a former Trimet driver. His name is Ben, and as some people know, I'm very interested in the stories of bus drivers that have somewhat different careers than the ones that make it 40 years and then retire and live happily ever after. And I think you qualify for that, Ben. And
Uh,
I was interested in your story, if you don't mind sharing it, and starting all the way from the very beginning, like how you even thought to apply, how you found the training, how you found the experience, and then how you found the ending, how you found the man, all of it. Can and you're stand up, so I know you know how to paint this shit. Have you started a comic routine over this yet?
yeah, I have bus jokes. Absolutely, those are some of the first ones I wrote. But
So let's hear it. How did you get into this in the first place?
yeah, so it was around April of 2015. It was this time where my life completely fell apart. I got laid off from my previous job, and my marriage fell apart within that time frame too. And I lost my apartment. She got the cat.
Gee.
And yeah, I was just looking for a gig and said they were hiring, and I heard the money was okay, and I was like, oh, I know how to drive around. I'd probably be all right at this. So really, it was there. They called me back and hired me. It wasn't anything seriously thought out, or it was just like, okay, maybe this is a way I can make make some more money than I ever have.
A steady job kind of gig.
Yeah.
I always give TriMet credit for like picking up a lot of us rejects and giving us something to do, because there's a lot of people that need a job, and that's one good thing about TriMet and public transportation. They do seem to do well by that standard. Okay, so they hired you, and so tell me about your experience in the training.
Yeah, trading was okay. One thing I didn't really like about it was, what that irritated me about it was it was very fear based, and a lot of these trainers, just throwing around the same stupid, shitty jokes that they've clearly been telling for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I do comedy. You gotta keep it fresh. When you're up there. When you're referring to the Line 72 as the Jerry Springer bus, it's like, okay, well, that show has been on the air in 15 years, and also it's a type of joke that would have flown back in the 90s, but now it's just like, some of those quote-unquote people you're making fun of, they're like in here taking the class because they need fucking health insurance, so...
That's right. Yeah. Bingo, you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, I didn't like it. I was an experienced driver when I came to TriMet, and they treated me like I was had no experience, and I kind of didn't like that very much, to be treated like, well, you're a brand newbie, you don't know anything. It was irritating, but yeah, that's interesting. So you didn't have any problems. You drove the bus, you got in, it was no problem for you. You learned how to drive fast, or how'd you take to it?
Yeah, I adapted to it pretty easily. Went out there, made a few mistakes. I got a PA in line training, but it definitely taught me how to
mirror.
No, left side of the bus.
Oh,
so at least I broke the average.
Yeah, you clipped a car or something coming into a stop.
No, I ran a telephone pole along the entire left side. It was pretty excellent.
Any other PAs while you were working there? How long were you there, by the way?
A little over 4 years.
Okay, that's long enough. Did you have any other PAs?
I did, yeah. I took out a mirror on Northwest 21st. It was just to try to thread the needle between a truck and a garbage truck, and it just a little too close on one side.
Mm-hmm. That was it?
That was it. That was it for PAs.
That's nothing, yeah. So nothing, basically. All right, so you started up. You got through the training. You thought it was okay. You just didn't. You thought they were kind of corny and stupid. How were your classmates? Do you remember anything about them?
Yeah, they were fine. I no real complaints about them. You know, they
all nice people.
seem like a few teams seem a little too eager to want to like hang out and shit. I'm like, no, I keep work and private life separate, so that won't be happening. But you know,
okay.
They were fine. They were bad people.
So no bad experience there in the training. Basically, you did fine, right?
No, I did fine.
No complaints. So you start up, you're brand new. Tell us how that went.
It was okay. I mean, there's that apprehension, and they back to the fear-based thing. That whole the whole thing with like being on probation, like oversleeps, PAs, time. You know, they throw all these spooky words at you, and there is there's definitely an element of you're really on your own. You know, when they put you out there. Obviously, at some point, you got to get in and take the pouch and do the runs. I get that. But man, like being like, there seemed to be kind of an air of like being afraid to ask a station agent a question, because depending on the one you got, they might be kind of a dick to you. And as I watched them do the job over the years, I understood that they got their own pressures and bullshit that are making them nuts too. But
I had the same experience. I had station agents I wouldn't even ask for my mail for them. If they were behind that window, I wouldn't talk to them at all because they were so rude to me that I would just avoid them completely. There was only a couple like that, but they were definitely there.
Yeah, there were station agents I avoided, and other ones I totally knew it was fine to work with.
Right. What about road supervisors? How were they? Did you ever have a road supervisor yell at you?
I had not scream at me. I had one like walk out into the middle of traffic and flip me shit because I turned into the the transit lane, not the auto lane off of Burnside on the 5th there. And it was just like, yeah, dude, you could have just let that ride. Like, you didn't need to come out into traffic to, But no, I never really had any yell at me. My real barometer for dealing with a road supervisor, if I needed one, I always looked for the ones who were been in the job a while, and in particular the ones who didn't wear their shields. If they didn't wear their shield, they weren't trying to be a cop, and they were always much more reasonable and calm and easy. Even if like they were talking to you about something you did wrong, they weren't a dick about it.
Yeah. There was definitely a hierarchy there. Yes, absolutely.
So that was always, and that's why I told new hires, like, if you got to deal with a road soup, look for one not wearing their shield, an untucked shirt. You're going to have a better time with that.
Yeah, look for the ones that like to, I don't know if they did this in your day, but in my day, they would park way in some parking lot way off in the back where you could barely see them when you drove by. I mean, they were there, but they were way in the back of the parking lot. So you could tell that they weren't going to like bust you for time or something like that. They had to be there somewhere on the route. But they were way back, okay, so you could barely see them. And they didn't take their job like, I got to go bust these drivers or whatever. Yeah, definitely. All right, and so that's good. So your experience so far is pretty good?
Yeah, it was an adjustment. Like, suddenly this whole thing of, like, the clock dictates all and split shifts and, So
you did work a lot of splits. You did.
Early on, yeah. I was part-time for 4 months. I went full-time into a sign-up.
Did you know that people used to wait like 3 years to go full-time at that place?
Yeah. I definitely.
It used to be a rare job to get full-time, and then it's all shifted and you go right in. So you went 4 months and you were full-time, huh? Jeez.
Yeah, and once I went full-time, I didn't have a lot of splits after that. Occasional sign up, I'd get some, but never with 6 hours in between shifts. It was like 3.5, 4 at the most, which wasn't great, but it was way more bearable than having to get up at 4 a.m. to go work till 7:30 and then come back at 3 p.m. It's just like, fuck that.
I know. What a horrible lifestyle. It's abusive. And it doesn't have to be like that. I don't know why they structure things like that. It's some kind of a psychological, industrial beatdown is what I've always theorized. Why would you put people through that?
Yeah.
And it's got to be for some reason of, well, we're only going to take people that will put up with this because we know we can control. That's been my theory anyway, because there's really no excuse for that kind of work. So
yeah, there's ways they could do that where part-time, I mean, just have like AM and PM part-time shifts. That seems so much more reasonable,
Right, but they don't. They want to make. I remember when I was there, and they had the 3-day. I guess I never went full time there. By the way, I was there 15 years as a part timer because I saw I was already experienced when I got there, and when I saw what the full time was, I'm like, I don't think so, dude. I'm not doing no 12-hour days, okay, of this particular job. No, thank you. So I stayed part time, and what was my point on that? I lost my train of thought. Because we had decent shifts, I could work from 4 to 10 or 3 to 9, stuff like that. So no mornings, no nights. All right, and so what else? How about the management? Did you deal with the management much?
Yeah, I had to deal with them here and there, like any corporate structure. If you're dealing with a manager, or even if you're working with someone who has done your job, they were promoted from within. There's just a level of empathy there. They get it. So even though they got to do their job, and that may be busting you or discipline, there's just a level of compassion that exists with a manager who used to be an operator than there is with any of the outside hire shift arounds they've done. It's like, oh great, you went to college and read a fucking book, like you just because you know how to manage, I don't know what's the term now, human capital. You don't. Just because you read about it and you were good at some tests about it, you can't really manage something you don't understand. And
correct, yes, I agree.
That's what was very irritating to me with some of the levels of management there. They were all okay for the most part. Like one manager I like dealing with was his name Leonard. Mainly worked out of Powell.
Oh, I've heard of him. Lamberth or something. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know him.
Yeah,
I heard of him. Mm-hmm.
He was cool. He was always super chill, and he drove for like 15 years or something like that. So he was cool. I would say the worst interaction I ever had with the office, one that just absolutely drove me nuts. I got a time slip back once on post-incident P-test I had to take, and because it happened like somebody fell and wanted to go away in an ambulance, so you got to go take a leak. Fine. That didn't bother me, but it was like at the end of my shift, and so it was 2+ hours. It was like 2 hours of rigmarole because I had to the supervisor had to stay with me the whole time. He had to take me to the place, all that, so and then drop me back at the garage. So he said, yeah, just time slip it. So I time slipped it. I get it back saying it needs manager approval, and I go back and there's only one in there, and she's just jib-jabbing on the phone. I mean, she's doing work. It's not like she's just gossiping with a friend or anything like that. But I was getting a little irked because it wasn't like I didn't get a, look, I'm going to be on this. Can you come back at such and such a time? Just the occasional hand wave. And then this was at the center, and it was the receptionist gal there. I can't think of her name, but she just kind of, it was just the tone. It had this real bitchy quality to it about is this really important? Can you just come back later? I only have one manager. And I was just, it had been a long day, and I was just like, sure, it's only about, money I'm owed, but no worries.
Yeah.
So I flipped her some shit and walked out of there. That was unpleasant. But other than that, it was fine. They didn't seem like terrible people.
Yeah. Okay. For you, I have a different experience, but of course, I brought a lot of that on myself. I can't blame them totally for my experience. What about what other stories? Any interesting stories while you were working there? Anything interesting? How did you find your coworkers? The bus drivers in general.
Yeah, plenty of them. I mean,
I know what you're gonna say.
Some of them were fine. I mean, part of why I stopped working at Powell was, I mean, good Lord, it was just like this, it was just this collective bitch session in the report area every day. It was mainly these, I can't think of names, but it was these, primarily it was like these 5'6" just pissed off white dudes mad at like, it's like, what? Yeah, sorry, white's not a resume builder anymore, you know, like, but they're just pissing and moaning. It's like, man, fuck off. You guys got the pension. You've been at top pay for a lot of years, you know, like, you know, and then, and like, you know, just hearing them bitch about the politics, and the TV was always on Fox News. And I was just like, okay, man, this is
That's the part that killed me. That those right wing drivers really used to drive me crazy, man.
Yeah, and there's a big element of that out at Merlot too. Center, because it's so corporate structured and everything, everybody was a little quieter about how they felt.
And Center is the most diverse of all the garages too, I think.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of like different cultures and values and stuff.
But yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, at Merlot, you know, it was the same kind of thing. You know? People would be
I remember
ranting all this right wing stuff and bitching about minorities, and then go ask, you know, their station agent, a person of color, for a TDA, and it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, it's like, oh no, sorry, you're one of the good ones. You know, there's, you know,
I had the same experience. We're 10 years apart from when we were there, but it was the same exact. You know, if I went back tomorrow, it would be exactly the same as when I left. I'm sure. Nothing ever changes there for some reason. It's like stuck in some kind of a time warp in terms of how they do business when it comes to the operators, anyway.
Yeah, and that's what I noticed is there were two groups of operators. There were people who, like, it was all about the job, you know, whether they were extra board or just came in early for some stupid reason. People would sit around and swap war stories about what happened.
Yeah.
Bitch about the job and bitch about this. And then there were people like me. I would come in and say, hey, you know, listen to my podcasts, you know, sign my work and just get the hell out of there. That was...
Yeah. I used to love, you know, I got into recording everything. I don't know what happened. It was just at the dawn of social media. I started recording all my adventures at Trimet, which of course led to my eventual demise at the job. But the culture was just fascinating to me. It's such a bizarre little world that goes on there. All right. Well, now let's hear about your demise. So it sounds to me so far, you know, we've been talking for, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, that you were doing fine. Your job, it was fine, right? Seems like you were adapted. You did the job well. You got along with customers, right? You never had customer problems, right?
Yeah, no. I, you know, in my time, I only had a couple of sips, and very...
Were they justified or were they bullshit sips?
One, I cut a guy off because the sun was in my eyes and I didn't see that the light was red. So, okay, yeah, he has a right to be a little pissed at me about that. But there were some that were just bullshit.
Yeah, most sips are crap. Most sips are bullshit. Yeah, I think I had one in 15 years, and it was because I didn't tell people to shut up or something.
But overall, yeah, way more people liked me than disliked me.
Right. Nobody ever tried to spit on you or anything like that, right?
No. A guy got in my face because I told him to leave this woman alone, and I had this one crazy lady who was just yammering about stuff who has to be quiet, and she just started ranting at me and calling me a bunch of profanities. So I just told her to get the hell off my bus and kicked her off. Outside of that, no, I was pretty good at talking people down or just, you know, handling it as need be. So it was doing fine. I think where I started to get, I plateaued in the gig where I kind of was like, okay, I've seen it all, every nuance, I got to this point with it where, I mean, I pretty much never had to call for help or, you know, any type of police intervention. And it got very old, very repetitive.
Yes.
And what angered me about the job so much is how much it monopolized my time. You know,
mm-hmm.
Most gigs, you know, you can get out. You know, like you can really leave the two separated. But where things with Trimet that irritated me was how, like it. You know, how it could bleed into your personal life. You know, doing things on a weekday, depending on your schedule, weren't going to happen. Accruing the accrual of time loss. Now, as a system, I get it in the sense that with that many employees, you need some type of measure of record to see how often people are ditching work, but to just make it a numbers game is very silly, and that it just like no wiggle room or anything like that. So, and especially when you're on probation, like if, say something like catastrophic in your personal life happens, you'll just get shit canned. There's no compassion, there's no leeway or anything like that. And, I just started to have these mornings where I would just wake up and it's like, I can't do it. I just can't do this today. So I wouldn't,
Oh, yeah.
And that's when my time loss started to get a little out of hand, and I could have handled it better. This will get to the termination aspect, and one thing that turns it bleeding over to the personal life. Now, I'm not a big user of drugs per se, but obviously you don't want your operators driving loaded, and there should be. I think though it should be tox screens, not your analysis, because I don't think if you go home and smoke a joint, that is any worse. In fact, I think it's less worse than going home and having 4 beers every night.
I agree,
because all a UA proves is that you did drugs, not that you were high in the moment, and that's where a tox screen would be a much more better thing for the Department of Transportation to use. Now, people will probably hear this and be like, oh, he just wanted to do drugs on the job. Like, trust me, there are plenty of operators using drugs, not on the job, but doing them in ways where they can skirt it, get past it, or just use the ones that DOT doesn't look for. Like, technically you could eat a bunch of mushrooms and crash the bus tripping balls and piss clean.
That's right.
Because they're not. And again, I'm not advocating that, but it's an area where I'm pretty libertarian in that, which is a word I don't like, or a political ideology I don't agree with, but I will say what an adult wants to do in their time away from work, the arrangement should be, okay, I show up on time, sober, and I do my work.
Right.
What I do when I'm not at work, get the fuck out of my life.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%. That's just a tool of suppression, basically. It's like to keep... It's another one of those industrial psychology. How do we manipulate our workforce to be in fear all the time? And that's just another example of that,
Yeah, you bring the drug use to work. Okay, now it's a problem. Now we have to address it. But if it's at home, but that's my feeling and my rant on that. So in terms of demise, but this correlates a little bit to eventual demise. So the job's very isolating and lonely, and depending on your schedule and all that, it can isolate you. It isolates you from the people in your life because, you're up at 4 a.m. or you're working until 2 a.m. because with full-time shifts, there really is no middle ground on, like the 9 to 5s, 8 to 4s, those get snatched up real quick. And I just started to become very isolated in the gig and, started drinking way too much to cope with the loneliness, the anger, and just the kind of thing where it's so much time in your head in that chair too, and like, what am I doing with my life? Why do I do this? I don't know if I want to drive a bus for the rest, but for me, it turned into this very vicious cycle, and definitely had a little too much time loss going on. But when I was working well. But then one night I made a very bad decision. Went out, got some dinner, had too much to drink, and drove my car again, very stupidly. Not a good thing I did. And I got arrested on a DUI. And when that happened, I was like, okay, well, this is the end of the gig. So
they used to give you one chance, but I guess they don't anymore.
Well, that's the thing is for like failing a UA, you still get the one. But with a DUI, because it comes with a suspension of the license. So So what I did immediately was the morning when I got out of the jail, I marked off on a FEMLA claim, not telling them anything. Just, okay, I need a little time to see how I'm going to approach this.
Right.
Talked with the union, and so they told me exactly what was going to happen. The best thing they could do in terms of me maintaining employment was to mark off on a personal leave of absence for a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be getting paid, but I would still technically be employed.
Who told you? The company told you to do that, or
no, the union.
Yeah.
The union.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, but then I didn't notify them that this happened right away, because I was like, okay,
yeah, right.
I just need to know. But it got DMV got them some info, because I got the paperwork. I was like, well, they know now, and my license didn't get suspended until my I think it was my sentencing day, where I went in and I just had to plead out and do all that. I mean, I didn't have to plead out, but fighting it wasn't.
Yeah, you can't beat it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, and then once that happened and my license was suspended,
that was that.
What they do in that point, and I never told them through this that I quote unquote had a problem, which I guess I could have, but what they do, which I don't like, is rather than going, okay, we have this person who has a problem, what's a compassionate way they can deal with this? What they do is they mark you off, but they mark you off no call, no show. So even though you've informed them and they're informing you that you will not be working with a suspended license, you're marked off no call, no show. So the paper trail says you've just abandoned your work, and then they fire you for misconduct. Then they deny. Then that way they use that to fight your unemployment.
Oh my heaven! So did you get the unemployment, or you didn't?
I did not. They fought it citing misconduct, because if they had said, well, we fired him because he developed a bit of a drinking problem, that violates all kinds of laws, or at least one. And in this sense, they are able to just sweep you away, and that's that, which is what happened.
Yeah, they could have just let it go, and you could have got your unemployment. They didn't have to say anything, right? They could have just said, "Yep, yeah." Nothing.
They could have not fought it. And,
yeah, could have just let the paperwork go through, and without saying anything, without making your comments. Because what happens is the unemployment notifies them, and they just say, "Are they working or not working?" Well, they just say, "No." If you don't return it, I guess that's like saying pay the claim or something. You have to appeal, is what I'm saying. You have to appeal the person's unemployment claim, and they could have just let it slide. But of course they didn't, because that's how they are.
Yeah, and that's where some of my frustration and disillusionment. Even before that, just what I was seeing in the job was, the very, here it is, this, public government funded entity, yet very corporate, very much run like it. I've seen these shitty business practices in every other job I've had before, where, admin is taking all the money, and they're telling you to do a zillion different things at once. So you try to do one thing right, but just by the way the rules are set up, you're doing a zillion other things wrong. So there's always some reason to bust you or give you shit or something, and it drove me nuts that, and just how powerless the union seemed. Now look, don't get me wrong, it's good as a union gig. That was another thing that drove me nuts, hearing people talk about, well, why should I have to pay these dues? It's like, because even the wee bit of action they give us is better than none at all. Do you want to just be able to be shit-canned like you're on probation again? People don't seem to get that. But a lot of times having my union rep there seemed to be like, okay, well, aren't you supposed to advocate a bit or help negotiate my rights as a worker? And that never really seemed to happen.
Yeah, no, they're pretty powerless, I agree. Other than the contract, I mean, like you just said, they get you the decent contract and pay and all of that, but they don't seem to have much effect on a punishment. Other than, although I've heard stories where people have been fired and have got their jobs back because of the union. So they do work in some cases. Just depends on what the case is, I guess. Okay, that's interesting. Any final comments or thoughts or?
Yeah. I mean, definitely given with everything that happened, just personally, I'm kind of glad I'm not there anymore. And, I seem to flush my previous life down the toilet at just the right time. Yeah, it definitely, whoever hears this, like, this isn't a woe me story. This is what happened to me. And,
Yeah.
The DUI and all that was definitely my bad decision. And, for once, yes, this was a fair use of the criminal justice system for my actions. But yeah, like, I would like to see way more solidarity amongst the workers there. It almost seems like a microcosm of how the country's working right now, where they have everybody pecking at themselves and the shitheads on top are just running the show. So I would like to, I'd like to see, since I've, way more operators, like with this coronavirus shit, like, they're not doing anything. I've seen the Facebook posts from other operators and station agents, and, station agents had to, like, give all their PPE equipment to maintenance, even though the agents deal with way more incoming public shit, when it's just like, okay, Trimet, how about you just buy the shit for everybody? Who's making these decisions? And that way operators could get together, and if something like this were to come along again, they could just organize a sick out, which isn't striking, not in violation of the contract. But if all of a sudden, like, 500 operators marked off, oh boy, okay, that would, just one day of that would be a huge disruption and send a message.
Mm-hmm. Well, way back when they were cutting our benefits in 2011, we had this great contract up until then, until McFarland took over. We couldn't even get people to stop working RDO. Okay, that's how. never mind do a wildcat. You couldn't even get people to stop doing RDO work. That's how fragmented the people are that work there. And that was 10 years ago, and I'm sure it's the same today.
Yep.
So, yeah, man.
Yeah, just dangling money, like, and right. I got tired of that. Like, taking the money, it's like, man, fuck the money. I'm exhausted. I'm going crazy here. Like, what's an extra $200 if I, like, die from just going nuts doing the shift? Like,